Right Side News, where we bring you the right news for the right side. I'm Jim Hoel. Thank you for joining us for our special edition of the Hoel Report Investigates, where we will be investigating stories that are pertinent to the American people and stories that may have not gotten a clear answer to yet. So, to get into that story tonight, we're going to be focusing on Russian collusion. Donald Trump's alleged involvement with the Russian government in the run-up to the 2016 election, and how that all came to be. So, in Josh Gernstein's Politico story about the owners of a Russian bank suing BuzzFeed for publishing the Trump Dossier, which was a dossier full of innuendos, false stories, innuendos, and it was complete and utter BS. However, so the owners of a Russian bank suing BuzzFeed for publishing the Trump Dossier, containing unproven claims that doesn't go far enough. These unproven and even disproven claims that have guided the FBI's dead-end investigation of President Donald Trump it's a dead-end investigation. And there's only one reason that former director James Comey deserved to be fired. The real Russian disinformation, which has been the notorious Trump Dossier, which has been serving as basically the roadmap for the FBI. So we have a salacious and phony dossier that is being used as a roadmap by the FBI and in their investigation. Weeks after Accuracy in Media exposed the nature of the phony document in a 3-part series, The Final Truth About the Trump Dossier, the Wall Street Journal columnist Holman W. Jenkins had stumbled upon the truth, saying that the dossier smells like a Russian plant. So, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal was onto something there. Our verdict was that the dossier compiled by former British intelligence operative Christopher Steele was part of a Russian effort financed by Hillary Clinton and her donors to smear Donald Trump and delegitimize his election. That's what all the evidence in this about this dossier has shown. In his column, The Trump-Russia Story starts making sense. Jenkins writes that it is likely that Steele was sent on a semi-witting vehicle for Russian rumors that were designed to expressly undermine President Trump and his administration. On behalf of Right Side News, we thank Mr. Jenkins for confirming what we have been saying all along, that this Russian dossier and the entire Russian collusion narrative is complete and utter BS. In addition to the latest lawsuit over the dossier, Politico's Gernstein reported that BuzzFeed was sued in February by Russian internet entrepreneur Alexei Gubarev over claims in the dossier that he and his firms used botnets and porn traffic to conduct cyber operations against the Democrat Party, which they don't need porn traffic to do that, but anyway, so we have one side saying that the Republicans are responsible, we have the other side saying the Democrats are responsible. So here's where we're going to get to the truth. At about the time the suit was filed, BuzzFeed apologized and redacted the information about Gubarev and his companies from the document. So that entire segment was redacted on BuzzFeed's site and in the dossier itself. Some of the unproven claims have been disproven and later on retracted. And, remember, folks, that Senator Grassley had asked James Comey about the FBI's relationship with Steele and this dossier. I'll pull it up right here. Senator Chuck Grassley on March 6th. I wrote to you asking about the FBI's relationship with the author of the Trump-Russia dossier, Christopher Steele. Most of these questions have gone unanswered. So I'm going to ask them now. Prior to the Bureau launching the investigation of the alleged ties between the Trump campaign and Russia in the run-up to the 2016 election, did anyone from the FBI have interactions with Mr. Steele regarding this issue? And folks, this is major stuff. This is really the FBI basically refused to answer the questions of a United States Senator. James Comey replied, "That is not a question that I could answer in this forum. As you know, I briefed you privately on this, and if there's more to this than it's necessary, then I'd be happy to do it privately." So right there, you should start thinking, okay, something's up. Because whatever something has to be made private, they're trying to hide something. So, Senator Grassley replied again to Jim Comey, "Have you ever represented to a judge that the FBI had interaction with Mr. Steele, whether by name or not, regarding alleged ties between the Trump campaign and Russia prior to the Bureau launching the investigation into this matter?" James Comey, former head of the FBI, then replied, "Once again, I gave it to you the same answer, Mr. Chairman." So basically, we had a bunch of non-denial denials from Mr. Comey, and we had a bunch of BS. Senator Lindsey Graham chimed in and asked Comey about Fusion GPS, which was financed by Hillary and her donors and acted as an alleged foreign agent for the Russians in Washington, D.C. Fusion is reported to have financed the entire Trump dossier. Remember, folks, the day after Donald Trump won the election, a meeting was held by Hillary Clinton and her entire staff as to what narrative they were going to spin as to how in the hell she lost the election. They had a meeting about this the day after the election. I guess you'd call it a crisis meeting, I don't know. But yes, the entire Clinton campaign and staff had a meeting the day after the 2016 election to decide what route they were going to take to try to delegitimize his presidency. Getting back into this. So, Senator Lindsey Graham asked if there was an alleged foreign agent for the Russians in Washington, D.C. that was under the disguise of a Fusion employee. It is reported to have financed the dossier. Molly Hemingway of the Federalist pointed to this exchange. Senator Lindsey Graham, "Are you familiar with Fusion?" James Comey, "I know the name." Senator Graham, "Are they part of a Russian intelligence apparatus?" Jim Comey, "I can't say." And this is our FBI director. Jesus Christ. "Do you agree, Senator Graham, do you agree with me that if Fusion was involved in preparing a dossier against Donald Trump, that would be interfering in our election by the Russians?" Jim Comey's response was, "I don't want to say." So, really, this is none of this line of questioning. It makes any sense at all. Basically, it's just a bunch of non-denial denials. So, James Comey's final answer is, I don't want to say. When you have this hanging over the American people, this is 2.5. This has been going on for 2.5 years now, and this was reported on back in, I believe, February and March of last year. But this has been going on for 2.5 years, and we still have no answers in the way of this. Anyway, so the liberal media will not admit, as the journalist Jenkins now does, that the dossier was a piece of Russian disinformation. But the Washington Post and other liberal media outlets are admitting that Comey used a dubious piece of the Russian intelligence to conduct parts of the investigation into Hillary's emails. The Washington Post reports that a secret document that played a key role in Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation has long been viewed within the FBI as unreliable and possibly a fake. CNN now said that Comey knew that a critical piece of information regarding to that investigation into Hillary's emails was fake, but did not let on to lawmakers that there were doubts about the veracity of the intelligence. So basically, some guy just made up a bunch of BS, passed it off as intelligence, and they used it. So, even though the media could not bring themselves to admit that the Trump dossier not only was dubious and fake, but was completely made up out of thin air and had more inaccuracies than any dossier that was used in any investigation. And the mainstream media, their excuse was that the mainstream media contained a lot of fake news. The May 2017 Harvard-Harris poll found that 65% of voters believed that the mainstream media contained a lot of fake news. So it's no wonder that the mainstream media in this country is not trusted. I've gone into that so many times that I don't even need to go into it anymore. They're just not trusted. And once again, this is part of the reason why. Now, there are also many fake pieces of information. It's hard for the public to keep up with them. It's hard for even journalists to keep up with them, because what is deemed irrelevant or salacious or false one day is then turned around and is completely changed over the next. So basically, it's a game that they're playing. Now, consider the Washington Post's claim that Jared Kushner, the husband of Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka, the Washington Post claimed that Jared Kushner and Russia's ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak, discussed the possibility of setting up a meeting at a secret and secure location and a secret and secure communications channel between Trump's transition team and the Kremlin. Even if that story were true, there's nothing inherently wrong with such a channel. In the event of a national emergency, in the time of a transition where you have a outgoing president and an incoming president, both administrations have to have access to the same intelligence. For reasons that, God forbid, but if a disaster were to occur and one administration was cut off, then the other one would have to take over. And they could bring on a constitutional crisis. And it's getting off topic, but so that's the reason why. There's nothing inherently wrong with an incoming administration having a channel to the Kremlin. However, they spun it in a way that made it look like, collusion, and And they continued to spin that it was some sort of covert operations by the Trump administration to collude with the Russian government. And this is after he won, by the way. So this is when his transition team was preparing to take the Oval Office. So, like I said, even if that story were true, which I highly doubt, and many people highly doubt, it's nonsense. It's routine. It's done by any incoming administration in a transition team. So, moving on. By the end of a long Politico story about this alleged back channel, we are told that this latest controversy would be part of a more advanced Russian plot, especially because the Washington Post report cited intelligence reports in which Kislyak talked to his superiors about Kushner's proposal. And it's never even proven that Jared Kushner ever proposed any of this. So, I mean, who knows? But regardless, a former State Department official came out and said that typically the Russian clandestine subversion specialists, being the best in the world in this demonical art form, operate in double, triple, and sometimes multiple tactical plot lines. They report that the U.S. has intercepted a message from Kislyak to the Kremlin saying that Kushner has proposed a back channel in this transition period. It has to be understood from the context that Kislyak knows perfectly well that all of his communications are being intercepted by the United States. So, just like the United States spies on its own citizens, it also spies on foreign nationals, and in that aspect, I don't really have a problem with that, but the Russia knew that. So Kislyak knew that all of his communications were being intercepted by the United States government, just like I'm sure all of ours are intercepted by the Russian government. So that's just how things work. Finally, we're hearing from an anonymous source who understands Soviet Russian active measures and operations that Kislyak would know that the information would be leaked for the purposes of confusing people about the Russian role in the Post and the other media lap and make the other media lap it up, making them active participants and dupes in Russiagate. So you probably had the Russians laughing their asses off at the moronic mainstream media United States, for one, by ever buying into this, and for two, basically doing their jobs for them. When you create discord in the United States, whether it was the Russians or the mainstream media or any of them, all Russia's got to do is sit back and laugh. In fact, I mentioned it before. I strongly believe that Vladimir Putin sits back and laughs at the stupidity and the hypocrisy of some of our government officials. Now, I don't think he would do that for Donald Trump, which is why I thank God that he's in office. I think he's someone who can get along pretty well with Vladimir Putin, who runs the only other country in the world that could blow us off the face of the earth with nuclear weapons. However, that's been stated. So, basically now we have the Russians laughing at us because the media bought into this, and now they're doing basically any form of Russian espionage or counterintelligence or any kind of operation that they would run to spy or to and analyze a new president was done not by them but by our own media. I mean that's how stupid these people are. And all the while Russia's sitting back laughing their asses off. So moving forward, what we can now say with certainty is that the operation looks like a successful effort by the Russians to tie the U.S. government in knots and drain important resources away from the battle we urgently need to wage against terrorism. And that's pretty accurate. Like I said, while Russia's probably laughing their asses off at us, at our government's instability and stupidity, and ever entertaining this ridiculous idea, it took away our resources from waging a war on terror, and could have also, led to Russian gains in other parts of the world, such as Syria or Crimea. Now we're depending on, however, we are now depending on a special counsel to get to the bottom of this corruption in the agency he once ran. And that is Special Counsel Robert Mueller. How likely is it that Robert Mueller will blow the whistle on the corruption in the FBI and multiple United States intelligence agencies is unclear. When he presided over corruption in the anthrax letters, the probe and got sued by an FBI agent for his mishandling of the inquiry. So who knows? It means that Russiagate and the disinformation operation will continue for months, if not years. And that an FBI director who blew one major investigation is now being entrusted to successfully continue another. As President Trump would say, what a waste. And it is. It is a waste. This has been going on for about 2.5 years now. And like I said before, if Donald Trump really some way, somehow colluded with the Russian government, then we must have the worst investigators in the history of this nation investigating this. It's been 2.5 years, and our top, the CIA, the FBI, any of these so-called 17 intelligence agencies, it's been 2.5 years, and they still don't have an answer as to whether or not Donald Trump colluded with the Russian government. So, as I laid it out tonight, basically, this whole Dossier and the Russian conspiracy theories and all of it was pretty much a smart play done by the Russians to use our own media against us, for one thing, and our own government against us for another. So, it's a smart move on their part, but it's a really irresponsible and careless move on the part of the United States and our elected leaders who let this go on. When you have the Russian government laughing their asses off at us because our media and members of our own government conducted this witch hunt to try to find evidence of colluding, Russian collusion, that they're never going to find. So, and as this article cautioned, this could go on for years. It's already gone on for 2.5 years. What are they going to do? Wait till 2020 and then 2 weeks before the election announce? If they did that, we may have to talk about another civil war scenario there too. But that's further down the line. Hopefully this will be resolved long before then, and hopefully we will get some answers as to what exactly was going on in the run-up to the 2016 election, who was spying on who ordered wiretaps, and what exactly was going on. And in our country right now, we don't have answers to that. And hopefully soon we will. So, that being tonight's special report of the Hoel Report Investigates, that has been our part on the Russian-collusion narrative. I thank you very much for listening tonight, and join us again, I believe, tomorrow as we will continue with another series of the Hoel Report Investigates. For Right Side News, where we bring you the right news for the right side, I'm Jim Hoel, and I am your voice. Thank you, and good evening.